Welcome back to the next episode of our Rising Relentlessly podcast. And after the earth-shaking success of her first curated anthology, Rooted to Rise, as well as the incredible impact of her memoir, Expiration Date Unknown, Rachelle Bryant has stepped once more into the role of curator for the second book in the Rooted to Rise series, which is called Rising Relentlessly. Rachelle is dedicated to empowering others to share their stories and their voices with the world. Her heart beats through the work with Wildly Free Publishing, and she is in the midst of guiding another group of authors who are telling their stories in the community that she's created in this latest anthology. Rachelle is a passionate storytelling expert, three-time best-selling author, and this latest anthology is set to launch on April 22nd. I'm Ashley Elizabeth, author, editor, and marketer for Wildly Free Publishing, and I cannot wait to get into sharing this space with you and learning more about all the behind the scenes that comes with being a curator of an anthology. So, Rachelle, welcome. How are you feeling?
I love being in space with you and love listening to your introduction of me. It doesn't even feel like it's really me that you're describing. So thank you for all of your kind words.
Mm. Well, Really You is really special, really, really special. And I can't wait for people to hear your heart behind this latest anthology. And so, what I'm kind of hoping we can get started with is when you think about the heart of this project, right? When you think about Rooted to Rise, and now we're into Rising Relentlessly, what do you think is the truth or the calling that is sitting at its center for you?
Not being afraid.
Mm,
I think that so many times from my own personal experience, I was afraid to use my voice.
mm,
And going through so many different challenges and opportunities in my life, I decided at some point that I was not going to be afraid and I was going to sit in those spaces with other people to not be afraid as well. I mean, being fearful is
mm,
a very normal, healthy
mm.
emotion, but giving ourselves permission to step outside of that and not stay in it is where the true power is, and doing it together.
Love that. And so when you think about this permission that you've given for all these people to step into their power and to step into telling their stories in this book, what do you feel like made this the right moment for this book and this particular group of people?
Really, it was just an organic progression from the original invitation that I created back in November of 2023. I knew that it wasn't going to be one book. I
Mm,
knew it wasn't really ever going to have a finish line. This first series is going to be a series of three books talking about the experience of Rooted to Rise intrigued and interest people to start going, are you going to write another book? Because I never really
mm,
talked about that there was going to be another one.
mm,
And it was through their excitement and their curiosity and their brave yeses when I finally made that invitation. I wasn't even sure that it was going to happen so closely to the
mm,
release of Rooted to Rise. We released that book in February of this year. It's still like, it's still hard to believe.
mhm,
Ah, and by June, we were having people saying yes. That's insane. Like, I had no idea. And we have like 8 to 10 people on a waiting list for the third book
mhm,
because when you go first, you're creating an invitation for people to say me too. And then
mhm,
they say yes, and they create a ripple effect of other people going me too. And it's
mhm,
just like, it's the most beautiful organic progression that I've ever witnessed in this genre, in this subject matter, that I thought 8 years ago I was just ordering a bottle of something to help
mm.
me as a tool to go through my kidney failure. No clue that 8 years later I would be curating book two and book three of a series to give people permission to talk about the plant.
Absolutely. Well, and when you think about kind of what your role is as a curator, right? You get this unique opportunity to be kind of guiding people forward, and you're kind of the that apex point, right? That everybody came to you, and so it's not that all the work gets done and housed under you. Obviously, you've got a wildly free team that's behind you, right? But you get to be kind of that beacon that's out front and it does this. But groups of adults have some interesting energy, and so I know from being in Rooted to Rise and also being in Rising Relentlessly, just the different dynamics. So as a curator, knowing that different groups have this different kind of energy, how would you describe the energy of this particular group?
Pure magic.
Mm,
From day one, I I know two of them. I got to strike up conversations with a few of them through actually the book release of Rooted to Rise, and we were doing a book
mm,
signing. And then the rest just kind of fell into my heart, which is what I like to call it. I wasn't the only one talking about it. The authors from Rooted
mm,
to Rise were talking about it. You were talking about it. So many people, our designer, Amy Hicks, was talking about it. And the energy is just when we get to have our gatherings, which is what I like to call them, because I don't like to call them meetings. When we have our gatherings, I never know who's going to be able to come. And
mhm,
each one has its own unique energy.
mm,
And to some extent, it's like a reflection of who I was when I wrote my first book, where it was, is this going to be good enough? Am I good enough? Um, all of the feelings that I had when I wrote in someone else's book, someone else's anthology. And so it's just a beautiful space where I feel like I've been gifted the energy of reflection
mm,
and the not necessarily the why behind being a curator of this series and other books, but the I want to show up every day because of them.
mm. That's really
And
beautiful.
yeah, I want to show up and I look forward to those Sunday connection gatherings once a month and just getting to know them better through the process and not just through their chapter.
Well, and I think it's important that you're pointing out that it is definitely a process because you would be the first one to tell anybody listening that it doesn't matter if you're sitting down to write a paragraph or a chapter or an entire book. But when you're showing up and it's real and it's raw and it's authentic, that is a process and it's something that really pushes on people. And I know that that's something that you really spend time talking about as you're coaching these authors through the anthology process because anthologies hold both like triumph and trauma, right? For people. I mean, it's pushing them in a lot of ways that it takes courage to show up in an anthology. So when you think about, and I know you do these, the monthly meetings, but there's a lot of other things that you do too. So how do you support our authors as they're kind of going through this process, or how do you kind of create space for them where they feel brave enough to tell these stories that are really hard?
I think the most beautiful thing about storytelling is that we get to use storytelling to support others in storytelling.
Mm,
And the fact, and I had this feeling this morning, the fact that somehow I was chosen to get to love
mm,
other people, I get to love on other people. It's really that simple for me. There's really no magic formula, there's no big story behind it, but being able to connect with them and tell them the stories of my processes or
mm,
how I showed up or my feelings, giving them permission to feel exactly how they feel, let them and let them. Let
mm-hmm,
them just, and not have any of those expectations of, oh, it's okay, you'll be okay, all that like toxic positivity. Being in space with people, particularly one on one, is my favorite.
Mm,
Being in groups has been a little bit of a challenge just because of who I am, because I prefer to give 100% to one person. But I've learned through this journey that I can give 100% to multiple people. So it's been a gift for me, but sitting with them in spaces outside of the monthly gatherings has really just been kind of a wow, they like
mm,
really trust me. And I don't
mhm,
take that lightly. The fact that somebody trusts me to be vulnerable when they don't really even know me, even getting to the point of their brave yes. Some of them
mhm,
just spilled so much of their stories and so many of their roadblocks.
mm.
And I got to have the honor to listen. I love to listen.
That's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. Well, and when you think about all of this that you've seen and that you've heard, and just what this journey has been like for you, because you're also an author in this book, but really the curating part of it, what has listening to all those stories taught you about storytelling? I mean, you're already a storytelling expert, but sitting in these spaces with people, what have you learned about like their courage to say yes, or what it takes to build community in this process and trust amongst these people?
I think one of the biggest lessons is that people are terrified to be seen. They don't want to
Mm,
occupy space, but they have this tugging feeling. And that's really where the storytelling comes into play. I've written so much about this one particular thing, but storytelling's in our DNA. It's
hmm
literally how we have survived humanity, survived the human experience. So many tribes of people survived solely because they were able to tell the story so that the future generations could not make the same mistakes and thrive as a community, as a tribe. And we all yearn to help others. And I think
mm,
that support element is just so woven into the tapestry of who we are. It is completely organically part of us to tell stories and to have that tug, but to be seen, to share really like intimate details about our life, whether it's like a mental health struggle, a physical struggle, what have you, because we don't want to play the victim. And that's kind of
mm,
a theme that I'm seeing is that people don't want to come across as a victim through their storytelling. And oftentimes this is the first time they're telling anybody about some of these uh, feelings attached to events.
hmm
Because you'll read
Absolutely.
in these chapters, it's not just about events, it's about how it made them feel.
hmm
And talking about our feelings needs to be normalized in our culture. Not necessarily our opinions and being rude to each other and disrespecting each other because they have a different opinion. We need to normalize that it's okay to sit in the discomfort of certain feelings and to celebrate the other feelings. We need to stop telling people, it'll get better, you're
mm,
okay, speaking all of these things into them. Rather, we should be sitting in the silence and be okay with silence. We need to sit and let them cry without touching them or trying to comfort them because there's purpose in those tears. There's a reason why we cry. And
hmm
I know that, the great honor to sit in these spaces with people and give them permission that uh, others gave me. So I get to pass
hmm
it on. And that's truly what storytelling is about. It's about the human connection. And it's what everybody's drawn to. It's why so many people doom scroll on social media from one story to another. they just want to watch people. Human behavior is fascinating. How many of you used to go to the mall back in the 80s and 90s and just people watch? My mom and I would go to the mall to pick something up or have lunch or what have you, and then we would just sit there, talk, and people watch. And I would always wonder, like, what's the story behind why they're there? And storytelling, I think, is just part of the rich culture that I grew up with. Coming from a Jewish family, I was usually the only kid in a lot of grown-up settings, and I learned to just sit back, listen to their stories, and learn
Mm.
and feel a part of something bigger than myself.
Well, and I can speak from experience that creating an opportunity to be a part of something bigger is absolutely what's happened with both Rooted to Rise and Rising Relentlessly. I think people experience that tug and that pull and that sense of purpose. And so when you think about all these different authors that you've worked with and guided along this experience, do you have a favorite moment at all of watching one of these writers kind of step into this power that you're talking about?
Stepping into the power, it's just, I love that process. I really do.
Hmm.
But on the flip side, what I really love is when they do that final submission
Hmm.
and they're on the other side of all of it. And they go, oh my goodness, I just did it. And I like to celebrate them all the way through. And I
Hmm.
like to focus on what they've already done, even if it was the brave yes. And
Yeah.
we get to celebrate that. So I love to celebrate what they've already done and encourage them for what is to come. But I would say that probably one of my favorite parts is on the other side of them clicking that final yes or that final chapter or that final book or whatever, and then getting to do things like this and sit with them and let them share themselves on a different level than only writing the chapter. So
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think that's a very special gift of yours, right? Is that you don't limit people to only telling their stories through words when they submit to an anthology like this. You give them so many opportunities to say yes to their story over and over and over. Come tell it on a podcast. Come be a part of a celebration when we launch the book. Make sure that you've written your chapter. But I know that the whole time you're encouraging people even to tell their story on social media and tell their story in different places. Like, be proud of what you've done and what you've stepped into and let others into that process, because I know that for you specifically, you're really big on going first. And I know that you've done that in so many situations, but now you're modeling that for other people. And it's really beautiful to watch you encourage them and guide them into those spaces. So I think that's really, I don't know, it's just you have a beautiful gift in that area. And so when you're thinking about whether it's this book or another book, I know that anthologies are a space that you are really passionate about. And so if you are going to give every future anthology curator or contributor a message, what would you tell people about the power that comes from being a part of an anthology or curating an anthology?
I love that question because so many people come to me with ideas of, oh, I've always wanted to write a book about this, or oh, and include other people.
Hmm.
Start with saying yes to yourself with that idea. I had the most amazing example through the curator that I worked with, Linda, in We Choose Joy. And I remember going through the process with her, and even I'd never, through the whole process of writing that book with the 21 other women, there was no way I was going to be a curator. Like,
Hmm.
no way. That wasn't what my calling was. And I got to fly up to Erie, Pennsylvania, which is where she lives and where we had like the celebratory book launch. And I remember getting to meet her for the first time. We had known each other
Mm,
for a few years beforehand. It was all that COVID connection, right? So we met on Zoom and we continued. Our whole relationship is pretty much Zoom. And getting to sit in that space with her, and this was her second book that she had curated. So I'm curious to
mm.
see what it feels like to be on the other side of two books. Um, and just being in that energy and realizing how brave she was. And I went up to her and I talked to her and I said, "Thank you for listening to the calling that was on your heart.
Mm,
Because you did, I got to, and
mhm,
all these other women and men got to. That not everybody's called to be a curator. And I'm more than happy to work with people in terms of like, if it's the idea and you want to be a part of it, but you don't want to do the curating, I'm totally fine with that. I feel very seated in that role in terms of supporting other people. But on the flip side to that, I want to equip you to be the curator. And the way that we do it differently at Wildly Free than what I've seen with other people is that you're never going to have to do any step of it alone.
mm,
I will walk the entire journey of curating a book with you, and you will be the curator of it because I think that, as I've said before, I just want to pass it on. And there's a whole different element to being the curator and being in it with other people and creating the invitations and going through the processes, but also having someone who did it before you
mhm,
and giving them those pieces of wisdom. Because just like I want voices to be authentic and honored and be yours within chapters, writing, and what have you, I also want you to become the curator that you're meant to be, because there's no two alike curators. We're not
yeah,
supposed to be the same in anything that we do. There's
mm,
no two same editors or two same authors or two same people. We're supposed to be unique and different. That's how we were designed. But to be able to give people that gift of discovering who they are as a curator is just a complete honor on my part. And I would say that you want to have something that's a shared experience.
mhm,
So for me, with the tribe, our cannabis tribe, we all spent with Rooted to Rise in particular, we were already a community, a tribe. So that made it a little bit easier. So if you
mhm,
curate a book with a group of friends first, I would say that that might be an easier first step. But I don't know, because this second book with these authors has not been difficult. And
mm,
on some level, it's just been another beautiful example of how the unknown just you know, wraps all the gifts that are waiting. But I would have a shared platform.
mhm,
Um, so if you're women in business, if you're wanting to have adoption stories, if you're wanting to have, overcoming addictions, if you're wanting to, what have you, and involve both men and women, because you never know what power men's stories hold. A lot of these are um, written by women, and this next Rising Relentlessly, we have two guys, and they're adding something that Rooted to Rise won't have.
mhm,
And they have that, different perspective and everything. And so when it comes to curating, have the conversation with me first to just even see if that's something that you want to do, and just jump. I had no
mm,
idea what I was doing. I'm still learning, and I will never claim to ever be, an expert on how you can do it best. I
mhm.
can only claim how I can do it best.
I love that. Well, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I mean, being a curator has so many beautiful, empowering, like amazing components. But there are also challenges. What would you say are some of the top challenges that you experience as a curator? And then how do you go about managing those challenges?
That's a great question. So I would say that one of the biggest challenges is seeing something in somebody before they see it in themselves.
Hmm.
Everything I do is very heart-centered. Every invitation is not, it's just to be in space together. A lot of anthologies are put together for profit, and for me, it's about purpose. So
Hmm.
I will always choose purpose over profit. And I really feel that um, people not seeing their worth when I can clearly see it, but also understanding that that's part of the journey.
Hmm.
I don't think I stepped into my first book knowing my worth as well as I do now. So that's like probably one of the biggest challenges is to just love them enough through the process. I would
Hmm.
think that another challenge is getting people organized because
Hmm.
everybody has different personalities, and you can tell them the same thing over and over and over and over again, and it
Hmm.
still doesn't like sit with them completely. It
Hmm.
doesn't. So whether it's something as simple as like this is the link for our gatherings, or this is the process, or like we'll send emails with a roadmap, and they'll still be lost, having that grace and that understanding that so much of their misunderstanding is through the traumatic experience of writing.
Yeah.
You have to call it what you have to call it, and trauma blocks us, and releasing trauma blocks us. I could go on and on for hours about that process, but and really the other challenge is after the book is released and they're in that high of being best-selling authors and authors for the first time in most cases and all of that, letting them know that their story still matters
Mm.
after the the releasing of the book, and continuing to love on them and encourage them to keep sharing their story. Not
Hmm.
necessarily the story that they've written, but the platform in which they put their story in, which is the book.
Absolutely. Well, and when you think about, all of these challenges and all of these things, what makes creating an anthology with Wildly Free so unique? Because there are multiple factors for that, right? But if whether it's you curating the book or somebody else coming in and curating it, or somebody who's saying yes to a chapter and saying, yes, I will be in this book that's being curated, what are some of the things that make saying yes to an anthology with Wildly Free so unique?
I think first and foremost, we don't say no to topics that are controversial. I never in my wildest dreams imagined I was going to go from sharing a chapter in a book about women overcoming challenges in their life to turning into a Canna publisher. This is the first of its kind. There's nothing out there that has this to the level, the personalization, the intention behind
Hmm.
every book that we write, every anthology we curate. And I think that one of the things I want people to understand is that no topic um, within some boundaries is
Yeah.
off limits, but we believe that every story, I believe, as a curator of a lot of these anthologies that Wildly Free is putting out, um, that we need to start talking about the shared experiences we have with each other. Whether it's, parents dealing with teenagers that are struggling with mental health, whether it's talking
Hmm.
about open adoptions. I'm throwing out some subjects that people are wanting to write books about. Whether it's about divorce, whether it's
Hmm.
about, sexual abuse, whether it's
Hmm.
about literally nothing is uncomfortable for us as a publishing team and as an individual, for me as a curator. And I think that there's just so much power behind the hearts of all of us as a team, from web developer to editors to designer. to marketing to storytelling. We're not throwing something up on social media because we're trying to make a quick dollar. We're
Hmm.
creating the same invitation over and over again until the right one lands on your heart. And until the right one is, oh, yeah, I would love to do a podcast, or, oh, I would love to be in a book, or, oh, I would love to, all the multiple avenues. And I think one thing that I love most about the difference of Wildly Free is that it's not all about just paid opportunities. The writing hour that you have created on Monday evenings has given such a beautiful invitation for people to show up and never have the pressure to take their writing any further than just being in that community. And I think
Hmm.
that that's so special, something that people can depend on and something that they don't feel like they have to do. They can come and go. Sometimes we have them come for months and then they don't show up for a while. And it's not about an expectation to show up, it's just an expectation to be in space together. We barely even talk, but there's something about knowing somebody else is doing it with you. And then at the end, we just kind of sometimes we share, sometimes we don't, sometimes we sit in silence. It's that whole silence piece that I love to sit in. And it's just that pause. Silence is not meant to be afraid of. Sometimes the pause of just, I did it again. I showed up
Hmm.
again. And when it comes to curating specifically, or being in an anthology, it's just about saying yes to yourself, just as you would like if you were to join a gym membership, or if you were to join a book club, or you were to join any number of things that you like to tell yourself yes to. This is just a different level. And I have to say that the after effect of writing a chapter, curating a book, is something that you're not prepared for, and that you will have takeaways for a lifetime. And it creates
Hmm.
that legacy piece that you were brave enough to invite others to have their brave yes. It's all about the brave yes.
It is. Well, and another thing that I think is really unique is that you empower all of your authors to be able to sell the book in whatever way they choose, to be of greatest benefit to them. So it's a unique experience also because not only do you get this heart-centered full suite of everything, but you have the ability afterwards to go and take the books and create your connections. And I mean, that's a lifetime opportunity for you to be able to get your story out there and to be pushing it into your community and in all those ways. And 100% of those profits go to our authors. Like
Mhm.
you don't have any hoops to jump through. And I think that's one of the things also that when it comes to Wildly Free is such a unique, beautiful thing, is that not only are you honored from the start when you come in as an individual, but even as you're wrapping it up, you're honored as an individual within this collective community.
Yeah, I
So I
would
think
love
it's
to
just,
talk about that for a quick second because, going into the publishing world, I had no idea who I was, what I was doing, anything. I
mhm,
just knew to not say no. And in the publishing world, you'll see it in the conversations on social media or conversations you might have with your friends. Everybody seems to have a voice of authority
mm,
about the world of publishing. And everybody, over the last 2 years is wanting to put us in a box. And are you a hybrid? Are you a vanity? Are you traditional? Are you self-publishing? Everybody wants to put a label on everything, and everybody wants to be boxed into something. And if you haven't guessed already through the name itself, we're wildly free. We don't have a type of publishing we are. We do everything from what feels best.
mhm,
And the model is lead with your heart and honor people's stories. Their stories matter because they matter. There's not ever going to be a time that you're going to be able to box us in. And
mhm,
you can, have the perception of with traditional publishers, you don't have to pay anything. Oh no, you pay for the life of that book
Mm-hmm.
forever. And what I wanted to do differently was, whether you're self-publishing or what have you, you need an editor. You need to pay for an editor. You're going to, really need marketing, which I think is where the self-publishing space
Mm-hmm.
needs to recognize that, they throw their book on Amazon and they're like, why am I not selling my book? Well, you didn't talk about it, you didn't have a team of experts, all those kind of things. But at the end of the day, it's yours. So if
Mm-hmm.
you spend, any amount of money on getting that book done, it's not just the book that you leave with, and you get to pass that on to your family. We
Mm-hmm.
don't talk about it a lot in this world, but there's certain things that you want to pass on to your family, and the rights of your book go to you. We just got to have the privilege to make it with you. But from front to back and everything in between and on the sides is yours. And that's really, really important for us to not only empower voices, but empower all the parts of the book process, even after we're done releasing it and making it a number one bestseller book. So
I love that. Well, as we're getting ready to start wrapping up here, when you think about Rising Relentlessly specifically and all of your experiences and all of everything that's been happening, what is one thing that you are most excited about as a curator when it comes to releasing this particular anthology?
I think it's in the name itself. Rising Relentlessly encompasses every minute of the process of this book. It, when I created the invitation for Rooted to Rise, I was rooted in my conviction that this needed to happen. And over time, with all of the authors from that book and from this book, we are all together collectively rising relentlessly to spread the truth of something that we didn't know we were going to have to keep fighting as hard. And we have encountered that we have to continue to have our voices be heard so that people can make educated decisions.
Hmm.
So many of us are medical professions, educators, um, moms, all of the things. And we want people to know that whatever anybody's talking about, to rise relentlessly, rise without permission, rise authentically, continue to just keep rising. And that's why I love that we have that word in both of these first two books, is because so much of the world is trying to silence us on so many different levels. Just the fact that we have become such an isolated society that we
Hmm.
hide behind our phones. And I see memes with marriages, they're just hiding. And we need to rise up and be the humans we were meant to be. And humans thrive through community. Humans
Hmm.
thrive with connection with other humans. And I want people to know the true meaning of the word relentlessly.
Hmm.
There, relentlessly is a word that is not used very often. And I
Hmm.
think that that's probably why at times I struggle to say the title of the book, because it's two such empowering, powerful words. Rising relentlessly means that you have risen to an occasion, even though it was hard,
Hmm.
even though you kept wanting to say no, even though you kept doubting yourself, even though people around you may have said, really? That's what you're going
Hmm.
to write a book about? That's the story you're going to share? All of that. And so I believe that the word relentlessly goes together with unapologetically.
Hmm.
And I love that word. I love words.
Hmm.
Um, unapologetically show up in this world the way you were meant to be and show up the way that you were called to be and
Mm,
show up unapologetically, not caring what other people think about you because they're not the ones that are living
mm.
your life. They're not the ones making the decisions. They're not paying your bills. And everybody seems to have the same thing in common that everybody has an opinion. And opinions
Mhm,
are great as long as they're respectful towards the opposing opinions.
mhm,
But whatever you're going through in life, even if it's a small rise, do it relentlessly.
mm. I can't think of a better way to close this one out. I can't think of a better way to close this one out. Rachelle, when I think about the power of this space that you've created, it makes me feel convicted to encourage anybody out there who's listening to this to not only go out, I mean, they can go right now and grab Rooted to Rise. Like those stories are out, they're available in this moment. And I feel like just to get a sense of what this is that we do, I would encourage everybody to do that. I would also encourage them to make sure that they've got April 22nd on their calendar. Because when this book, Rising Relentlessly, comes out, like that's not something you're going to want to miss. This is a powerful, purposeful, beautiful book that I know that it's gonna change lives. It's gonna do all these things that you've been talking about, which is this power of community wrapped up in pages that we are gifting to the world, right? And that's because you said yes, which is the last thing that I would tell people. Because if you've got something that's on your heart, if you know it is a chapter that belongs in a book, or if you know that there is a book that you are ready to either put out there yourself or that you're ready to gather people around, Rochelle, there's no better person that I would put in front of them than you. There is no better person that I would put in front of them because you know what it's like to go first and to lead with your heart. And this is a second example of the fact that you have been willing to be courageous and to rise relentlessly yourself as you're leading the way for others. And so if you're somebody out there that's been waiting, like if you're like, oh gosh, I need a sign. Oh gosh, I don't know if my voice matters. Like this is it and it's right now. It's right now. The answer is yes. And I'm telling you that this is the place to go. This is the place to do it because over and over you have people who are leaving here, authors who are leaving these spaces empowered and courageous because you decided to say yes first. And so thank you for being willing to do that. Thank you for coming on this podcast. Thank you for sharing your voice and your light with the world. And for everybody who's listening, make sure that you are following and subscribing to these because you're not going to want to miss all the rest of them because we get to interview all the authors. You get to interview all the authors. You're the curator of this. You get to interview all these people and show the rest of us just how magical this process is. So
Thank
thanks
you
for
for
being here
letting
with
me
us.
share my heart with others. I appreciate
It's
that.
beautiful. Let's amplify it. Okay. Follow, like, subscribe. Let's do this thing. Bye, everybody.
Bye.